This is A View from the Bunker. Now, here's Derek Gilbert.
There is a rising tide of anti-Semitism in the body of Christ. It's been growing ever since October 7th. And I think it's time for us to change course here as believers in Jesus Christ. Welcome to A View from the Bunker. I'm Derek Gilbert. This may be a program that steps on a few toes. We're not doing it deliberately, but we think there are some very important issues that need to be addressed here. Joining me for this is a gentleman we've come to know over the past few years as a deep thinker, researcher, and very passionate and outspoken gentleman on the subject of politics, and especially how we as Christians process things that happen in the geopolitical realm. Call it theopolitics, to borrow a term from Sharon. He is the host. He's a film producer and director, but also the host of the Sutherland Report on YouTube. I'll put a link in the notes to that program. And we welcome via internet from the UK, Mark Sutherland. Mark, thank you for joining us.
Derek, it's lovely to be here, and thank you very much.
It surprised me just a little bit, understanding that the world is going to be aligned against Israel. We see this in end times prophecy, prophecies in say Joel and Zephaniah and Zechariah. Zechariah specifically calling Jerusalem a cup of staggering to the nations. Amazing that a religion that is not even among the top 10 largest on planet Earth, that being Judaism, is so front and center in these geopolitical struggles taking place in the world today. Things have really ramped up since, as now we're recording this on Monday, April 15th, Iran struck Israel directly for the first time ever, less than 48 hours ago. We're waiting for the other shoe to drop, as there will probably be a response from Israel to Iran. By the time this is released on the internet, we will know what that is. At this point, we don't know what that is. But over the last 6 months, public opinion in the immediate aftermath of the attack on October 7th was very pro-Israel, and that has drained away very quickly. And now we're seeing things, attitudes towards Israel are more, how shall I put this? There are more outspoken Christians putting forward what should be or what should have been debunked conspiracy theories about the state of Israel and Jews in general from professing Christians than we saw prior to October 7th. And Mark, that has kind of surprised me.
I couldn't agree more with you. It's also surprised me, but it's also deeply, deeply upset me. And I will not hide the fact that I think on one particular occasion, I was in tears. I was enraged by the comments from certain people and the ridiculous things that have been said. And also, Derek, being said, I believe, out of total and utter ignorance and not understanding the facts. And it's all awful, because after the 7th of October, within 24 hours on this side of the pond, it was Israel has got to show restraint. You have to show restraint. Immediately came out. That's one thing that was in the mainstream press. What has been so offensive is to see people turn around and go, it's the Zionist movement that is causing all this, etc. And on a personal level, it's meant that I have really, really worked hard to try and go down the rabbit hole and look at all this. And when people are undermining Scripture, you and I, the phrase that Chuck Missler said, the Old Testament is the New Testament concealed, and the New Testament is the Old Testament revealed. Mm-hmm. And we then come across people that are being selective and go, oh no, that's the Old Testament, it's irrelevant, we're in this new covenant, bloody blah. Now, and you are far more of an expert on this than me, but the fact is that when people are questioning Genesis 12, verse 3 onward, about, if you bless my people, I will bless you. If you curse my people, I will curse you. and questioning that, when they are questioning, as you quite rightly say, Zechariah 12, I think, about this whole thing of Jerusalem will be a cup, it will be a stone, it will be the point that holds all the nation states to account. And then when you're looking at Isaiah 66 saying, can a nation be formed in a day? Okay, and then of course other Bible prophecies of warning of where we are, and people don't want to look at this. And then suddenly we're getting into this huge debate of, well, the tribulation, as we've already been through it, the millennial kingdom, it won't exist. You know, we're going to sort out the earth, and then what we do, we get on the Jesus phone, and then we phone him up and tell him he can return in our time, and we get into a bunch of NAR thinking. So what it's done is to challenge, really challenge all of our theology. However, no. A little nation the size of Wales over here, right? So within the UK, Scotland, Wales, England, Northern Ireland. For you, geographically, on your side of the pond, it's the size of New Jersey. 16, and you've made a very brilliant point, 16, there's only 16 million Jews within the world. And I think now in Israel itself, it's just turned where there's more people in the land, more Jewish people in the land than there is outside the land. I think that's a recent thing.
Yeah, within the last year.
And Scripture says, now, if we're drawing to, and I'm not a date setter, my brother, and nor are you, but we are called to look at the signs of the times. And people are uncomfortable, I think, to now look at Israel and what's happening, which is, as you have constantly said in your work, that when the nation state of Israel was, I think, established 15th of May 1948, then that was God's prophetic time clock ticking away. And I'm sure, some certain individuals have completely and utterly gone off the reservation in my belief, and I will say it like people like Stu Peters, for argument's sake, where it's literally it's the Zionist and all this, and I'm going, Stuart, if you are purporting to be a Christian, then we need to go to Scripture. Now there's other people that, I think Pastor Greg Locke on your side of the pond has also really called him out on this. We have to go back to Scripture. The way that certain members of the Truther movement, and they've made that accusation where Netanyahu set all this up so he could then invade Gaza. Well, as far as I'm concerned, no. However, the incredible, wonderful journalist Caroline Glick, and I really encourage everyone to go to her. This is really, really important because I want to quote from her show of November the 30th last year. And if people, I'd encourage everyone to look up her show of November the 30th last year. And her show explains things greater than I will be able to maybe tonight. But it's also today. It's also really important to get the facts. We all were shocked about the 7th of October last year, and because of 1,200 Jews being killed, 246 hostages being taken. So it was the biggest pogrom since the Second World War. And I would just like to put on record, before anyone disputes this, I have had one of the most horrific experiences of my life was to stand in the gas chamber in Auschwitz, in Auschwitz itself, in Germany, as the concentration camp, and the concentration camp where Mengele did his experiments, paid for by Big Pharma. And that creates another discussion. So I have been in there, Derek. I have stood there. We have got people that deny the Holocaust ever existed. We have got people denying that 6 million Jewish people were exterminated by a gas called Cyclone B, created by a pharmaceutical conglomerate called IG Farben, which Karl Duisberg, who was head of Bayer, headed up. That is historical facts, and there's a reason why I'm saying that, because Duisberg then found himself on trial at the Nuremberg trials. So we are going, and you and I, and this is a very important thing I think to say as well, that you and I work hard to report facts and not come up with conjecture, because this is important, and particularly important to a subject, and the land of Israel and the Jewish people are very close to our heart. So having stood in Auschwitz, so on the day of 7th of October, 1,200 people were killed, many people were injured. And there were huge questions about how could the Hamas terrorists come over through the fence at a number of different points. And you've got friends over in Israel that you are regularly in contact, that you regularly talk to, who are also in the IDF, also been serving in the IDF as reservists in various capacities. So you are able to have those conversations on the ground. So whatever I'm going to say now, people can verify. So people began to question, and of course within the Truther movement they'd say, well, how can this happen? Because it's always been said that if a wasp landed on the fence, then it would set off an alarm. Caroline's program of the 30th went through this, that a year before, or at least 6 months to a year before, that people within their battalions who are very intelligence were observing movements, were observing what was going on. And Caroline talks of that. She then talks about a general and another major, I think, within the intelligence battalion, then ignoring this. Then talked about a gentleman who was given equipment by the IDF, like because he could translate, listen to what the movements were, like a bit of a ham radio operative in one way, and he would pass this information on. She talks about the fact that his equipment was taken away. Talks about the fact that he and another non-commissioned officer, member of the intelligence corps watch, a lady, I think, with 20 years experience, then went with a major with 30 years experience to confront this particular major at the top of the intelligence corps to say, look, we've got all this information. And they were poo-pooed. And in fact, I think one individual might have even been disciplined. Now, it's always been said that there are female members of the IDF that are looking at these screens, looking at, because of the attention to detail that our wonderful female species bring to our lives and these kind of events. So that has been said. The information was constantly being said, look, what are they doing? And in the end, as Caroline pointed out, they then found the plans. So it was all the paragliders coming in, how they would go through the fences and all the rest. So this was reported on, and when the appalling events happened, the shock was that what was reported on, the plans that were revealed, had then unfolded. And what has happened, and it has to be addressed, that within the Truther movement, I find the reporting irresponsible, frankly.
Right.
Profoundly irresponsible. And I'm more than prepared to put my hand up when I don't get things right. I'm more than prepared to do that. We work hard. I think it's even more of a big responsibility on us when I'm given a platform to speak. And every time I do it, I'm very grateful for that, and I don't take that for granted. So we're working that. And I know, Derek, when you're doing your reporting, you are working hard in a short space of time to get facts over, because let's face it, and I'm not being rude to America, but your news is profoundly restricted in regard to the funnel and the prism that it sees it through.
Yep.
And I hate to say it at times that it's to what's the word, to sort of puff things up that aren't quite true and be melodramatic seems to be appealing, because you then get more clicks on your particular platforms, and it's not about that. So I come back to Caroline's report and subsequent report, because I would really ask people to look at her work. And also there is there's Jonathan Pollard. Now, Jonathan Pollard was incarcerated in America for 30 years. Is a very interesting character, and accused of spying on America on behalf of Israel. Now, Jonathan is now in Israel, in Israel, Jerusalem, where he lives. Now, he regularly does a show with a rabbi, and I ask people to look it up, because the insights that people get are very revealing. And also, I would advise people to watch a show called The Quad by 4 wonderful Israeli ladies that run that as well. And the reason why I say this is because one of the things that, of course, is going on within Israel and the build-up to this is because before the 7th of October, for a year, Israel has had 5 elections in a very short space of time. There were the protests against Benjamin Netanyahu when he then was elected, and those protests were being funded. And as we're now trying to work out which colour they are trying to use for the colour revolution that they wish to then bring in. Now, all of this is relevant. Am I saying that my government over here is perfect? No. Am I saying that the Biden administration is perfect? No. Am I saying that Benjamin Netanyahu's government is perfect? No. Am I saying any other government is perfect? No. Am I concerned about how the way vaccines were pushed in my country? Yes. Am I concerned about that in your country? Yes. Am I concerned about that in Israel and every other country in the world? Yes, I am. Am I saying that God is not in charge and have not got the whole of this in the palm of his hand? I am saying he's got the whole of this in the palm of his hand, and certain things do not make sense straight away because we want instant answers. So let's go back. The Supreme Court and the fact that Bibi Netanyahu's government wanted to realign the Supreme Court, I have come to understand this. And we have the same, to some extent, the same problem by the fact that Tony Blair, when he became Prime Minister in 1997, soon after brought in a Supreme Court, and that challenged the constitutional government of our country. Within Israel, what has vexed the government as the fact that the Supreme Court will say, no, you can't do this, no, you can't do that. And that the comment has been this: is their decisions based on law that has been established on Israel, or is it based on the feelings of how the judge has woken up that morning and the decision they're then going to make the afternoon inside the Supreme Court? And I think that is what began to vex people. Now let's go back as well. Under the Obama administration, there is no doubt about it that Obama made it very clear that he and Benjamin Netanyahu did not get on at all. So let's put that in context. Let's also remind ourselves, and I've used an unfortunate word in regard to saying put in context, because it seems that that word context has been abused in regard to what has gone on, because various university leaders on your side of the pond could not answer a straight question and end up putting it in a particular, we have to put it in context under DEI and not addressing anti-Semitism. The key is this as well, is that the Obama regime disliked Benjamin Netanyahu's government profoundly. We then also have to put in a context that as soon as President 45 Donald Trump was not the president anymore, and when he was president, he economically worked hard to bankrupt Iran. Biden then gave $8 billion back, and then their oil business was then resurging, and then they've signed contracts with China and all that. I am deliberately saying that to try and give an overview of what is going on, because the political complexity and people speaking out of both sides of their mouth is going on. And what has happened is that overnight, and you can say this through dear friends of yours that are over there, we saw the protests that were happening on a regular basis. And I've heard a figure that says that every time that there is a protest that goes on, it costs a heck of a lot of money every night, whether that's in dollars or shekels, to actually put these protests on. So it begs the question, who is actually financing this? And they're ending up, does it go back to a Soros type character? And it's not to say that to be provocative. This is genuinely, and we've heard it, because Biden has then called out for basically regime change within Israel. Yeah. Praise God that literally, and no, we would not have wished this on Israel at all, or any country, but on the 6th of October, there was peace. By the 7th of October at 6 o'clock in the morning, that peace has ended. In the morning, and this has been talked about, military top brass were found about there is some very odd things going on against the fence in regard to Gaza and Israel. There is movement going on that is not natural. People were told to ignore, oh, don't worry about it, I'm going back to sleep, and ignore that. Sadly, that meant that young men and women of the IDF who were on their outposts were then killed in their beds because they were not woken up to go and find their guns, go and get in their tanks to get ready to defend their country. I'm not saying this for effect. I feel emotional even saying that because of the ramifications of someone making that kind of decision. Because sadly, that is what happened. Then, as Caroline lays out, the big question is the gap between the response, and there is no doubt about it that as soon as people heard what had happened, the brave men and women, without waiting for instructions from IDF headquarters, grabbed their weapons and went straight into battle to defend their country. Now, holding that in context, it then took a week or two, or maybe a long week, to then get the war cabinet together, etc., etc. So she lays out, and I'm trying to get this word right, it's whether the opposition movement to Netanyahu is either called Kepler or Kedar, and I think it's called Kepler. There were then links within one of the leaders of that is then related to one of the top brass within the military. You then have got to hold an ideology, and an ideology is this, and it's sadly illustrated very profoundly by this. The kibbutzim like Berry, who were viciously attacked, where people were murdered, etc., etc. And I'm not going to go into those details because, quite rightly, the Israeli authorities have revealed awful footage of stuff that even makes outfits look like a member of the Red Cross. I'm not saying that for effect. It's true. It's awful. And so this then happened. There was a huge unity that came together overnight. So a left-wing mindset that has been so challenged now, and none of us, what people have got to understand is that the kibbutzim in Barbary were taking Palestinians from Gaza, taking them to Israeli hospitals if they needed help and all that. They are peaceniks under the word of, in the sense of flowers in your hair and sticking flowers in rifles and all this kind of thing. Because of the dreadful events of the 7th of October, they have completely and utterly changed their mind to turn around and say we cannot have a two-state solution. Now let's roll back. Ariel Sharon, I think in 2003, much to people in Israel objecting to this, withdrew all of Israeli citizens. They dug up the Jewish cemeteries where their relatives had died, had been buried. They dug up all the bones, they dug up everything, and they retreated. They left the horticultural businesses with all that infrastructure in a place called Gaza. And it was reported, it was delivered to the Israeli people like this: if we withdraw from Gaza, we are then handing over a potential of an area to create a beautiful place, Mediterranean, like Cannes, say in France, on sea, and a beautiful, beautiful city. And we are handing that over to, and I will deliberately say this, the so-called Palestinians, because that's another history lesson in itself.
Yes.
And it's important, Derek, isn't it? Because history is important. I'll just say this, that the Palestinians as a people group recently didn't exist until 1967, after
That's
Yasser
correct.
Arafat had been to a PR company, I think in New York. I've forgotten the PR company's name. Remember that he had also been trained by the Soviets. There's another link here. Pass this on. That when they talk about the protocols of Zion, everybody, I ask you to go and look up the history of that, and I ask you to go back to the Soviet Union and to see the history and the total propaganda that has pushed. And the reason why I say this, and there is no link between that and the kibbutzim Barbary, but the link is socialism and a left-wing thinking, because when Israel was established, Theodor Herzl, as one of the founding of recent fathers of Zionism, because you can argue that there's been that movement had been going on for a few centuries. But Theodor Herzl would not have called himself a religious Jew. He was a political Jew, and that through what was called the Dreyfus case, which I understand as Theodor Herzl was, as a reporter, he found himself in a court case, and the court case was of a French soldier who was accused of spying for, I think, for the Germans, etc., which was not true. And Mr. Dreyfus was in fact Jewish, and basically that is why he then found himself there. What is fascinating as well, when you start going down this rabbit hole and you look at the sad pogroms, the attacks on the Jewish people every single century, if you go to the Weimar Republic, there is a conversation about the Jews fighting in the German army. There are conversations about a medal that was given to rabbis, which has the Star of David hung on an iron cross and stuff like this. It's fascinating and it's complex. But going back to Theodor Herzl, from that court case, the Zionism meets, and we go back in history, and we have to understand that in 1948 there were a lot of people, Jews, that then founded that country that had a socialist mindset.
Right. Yeah.
And then if you jump from 1948 to 1967, I think that is when it becomes more of a conservative, what you and I would view as a conservative viewpoint. I mean, now many of us call them conservative in name only, or on your side of the pond, I'll call them linos, you'll call them rhinos and everything, or like leave in name only, etc. This is important because even when it was founded in Jews moving into the area, coming to found Israel as well, that's another long history lesson of how the land was founded, who was there, going through the Nakba, as the Palestinians call it, the fact that people have no understanding of the amount of Jews that were expelled from all the countries around the area. And the reason why I say this is because the Truther movement grab hold of this and say, well, look what the Zionists do. Well, let's just say this. Jordan, the countries that attacked Israel on the day after it declared its independence, and remember with the Balfour Agreement, the British had the mandate for Palestine. We also did some appalling things in the fact that at times we worked very hard to make sure that didn't happen. We then had linked with Lawrence of Arabia, and we'd linked with the Arabs to say, if you fight the Ottoman Empire with us, and then we'll promise you land and all the rest. And then, of course, Transjordan coming about in 1922, etc. On the one hand, I do apologise in this discussion in the fact that I am going all over the place, and I'm trying to paint an arc in regard to a political thinking, Derek, that has then changed. Because when you go down this rabbit hole, it is complex on the one hand, like all of our countries, in regard to how certain things have been established. But the 5 countries that attacked Israel on the day after its establishment said to people, well, if you leave, because we'll deal with these little Jews and we'll exterminate them, and then basically you can then come back to your land and your houses.
Right.
The war was over a year, and the rest is history. And of course, when you go back through the Peel Commission, when you go back, I think, to there was a pogrom out there in 1929. Around about that time, you then ask a legal expert at that time, I believe, called Hammond, who was then saying to the Arab people, has any of this land been stolen off you? No, we have sold it. And in fact, we've made quite a lot of money because we've sold it at overpriced realtor prices, right? And the reason why I say that is because we have unfortunate left-wing journalists on this side of the pond, a gentleman called Owen Jones and others, who will dispute all of this, and then we go through this. So coming back to Theodore Herzl's realization after the court case, he turned round and said, I am now convinced that Israel, we have to have our own statehood. He could not have seen, and nor could anyone at that time. And I'm appalled by this when I think about this, because during the 30s, as Kristallnacht was happening, as the persecution was building up within Hitler, and of course writing Mein Kampf, and Mein Kampf then influenced by the protocols of Zionism, which is rather interesting, because people say, well, hold on a minute, Hitler, it's fascism, it's right wing. Well, let's just look at Nazism, the National Socialist Workers' Party. The word socialist is the clue, and here is the important thing. It's how we define capitalism and how things are then created. Within communism, it's obvious the state owns everything. within fascism, the hint is to turn around and say, well, it's private enterprise that is running things. Well, private enterprise may be running things, but they're given government contracts, which means they're members of the Nazi party. So all of this that is then going on. So Theodor Herzl said then we have to create our own state. He could not have seen what was happening during the 30s. We were not allowing, we're making it difficult for Jewish people to come to the UK. And of course, many Jews then got out of Germany. We go back to 1880. We see the appalling pogroms that were happening within Russia, and that was all this build-up. And I asked people of the Truther movement to think about this. How would they feel if they, as a people group, were persecuted every century, where even, they are persecuted, they are annihilated? And there was no doubt about it for the UK that Edward, and I always get this period of history wrong, whether it's in the 1300s, the time of shown in the film Braveheart with William Wallace, yes. which I have to say to you, historically is not quite accurate in various places, but the king that's depicted there, he threw out all the Jewish people out of our country. Oliver Cromwell quietly let them back in. From 1820 to 1851, and Disraeli, our Prime Minister during that period, was Jewish. We began to give full citizens' rights and voting rights to the Jewish people who were within our country. And I would venture to say that one of the reasons why that we were blessed under the Victorian era is because of that. It's one of the reasons I believe that we had the Industrial Revolution. So people should look at all the history of their own country. So going to the 1930s, it's appalling what we did. In 1922, Churchill then created Transjordan. 78% of the land that was promised to the Jewish people was then taken away. So they were then only given...
A lot of it was east of the Jordan River, and most people are not aware of this. What Israel got in 1948, they wanted to squeeze Israel into the pre-1967 borders, but, pre-1948, Israel had been promised a big chunk of what is now in Jordan proper. So,
Absolutely. And Derek, sorry, I know I'm going on with so much and going down various rabbit holes, but it's important to set all this in context then. So coming back to now on what's been happening, the Oslo agreements are really, really important. Going back to the 67 war before that are very, very important, because after the war of 67, the IDF, the Israeli army, I believe, were within an hour of Cairo. They had taken a lot of the Sinai Desert. In 67, they handed back the Sinai Desert. They had then, of course, by then have got Gaza. They wanted to hand back Gaza to the Egyptians saying no, no, no. At the same time, in 67, Jordan, from 48 to 67, then I believe, and please correct me if I'm wrong, had full control of Jerusalem. And then after the 67 war, that was the first time that the Israelis had control of Jerusalem.
I did some reading and research on that to write about the Temple Mount and the Third Temple, and this was one of the consequences of the strong influence of the atheist socialist kibbutz movement in Israel. Moshe Dayan being a product of that. When they took the Temple Mount in Jerusalem in 1967, he thought, the only real importance of the Temple Mount is that it's historically important. We'll let Jordan and the Waqf continue to have it that will bring peace, because they'll be happy and we'll get access to it because it'll be, we'll have security control. And of course, it's a situation that over the last 50 plus years has left nobody happy, which is why you still get the riots up there on the Temple Mount and these supremely religious Muslim youths using the Dome of the Rock as a place to store rocks to throw at IDF soldiers and Israel police. So it is, if in 1967 Moshe Dayan had said, this is the most important site in all of Judaism, we're taking it and this will be ours, who knows? There may have been a wider war. I mean, he was concerned about that, but obviously it did not bring peace, which was his hope. The effort to return Gaza was after the 1973 Yom Kippur War.
Right.
It was so that was Egyptian territory until 1973. So those who are criticizing Israel and saying, well, since 1967 the people of Gaza have been oppressed, they were Egyptians until 1973, and the Egyptians didn't want them back. Why? Look no further than Black September. 1970, was it 1975? I'd have to go back and check the year. But the Black September uprisings in Jordan, when the PLO, led by Yasser Arafat, tried to overthrow King Hussein. And the Jordanians finally said, this is it. We are sick of you people. Get out. The Jordanian army fought a war against the PLO, kicked them out. They went to Lebanon, and then they stirred up a revolution in Lebanon. This is why the Egyptians don't want Hamas crossing the border today. This is why Jordan doesn't want them. This is why Lebanon doesn't want them. The Saudis don't want them. And I think it's important to go back to something you said earlier. There is no Palestinian ethnicity. These are all Arab nations. These are all Arabs. But sadly, those in control of the people living in Gaza, Hamas, the military arm of the Muslim Brotherhood,
yes,
has so much control over the poor Arabs who live in Gaza, and not necessarily poor economically, but poor that their lives are twisted into these horrific shapes by Hamas. They are oppressed by Hamas. Hamas struck at Israel on October 7th, then fled back to Gaza, and then hid behind the civilians, hid underneath the hospitals and the mosques and the schools. And this is an ongoing tactic. And this is where I am just astonished at the response of the West in general, but Christians in particular. Yes, I understand there are innocent people dying, and this is tragic, and it's horrific. And if we could stop it today, we would be all in favor of that. May Jesus return tomorrow and put an end to all of this. But you cannot have peace when only one side will lay down its arms, and the other side is willing to continue shooting from behind innocent civilians. And that is what Hamas has been doing, what Palestinian Islamic Jihad does, what Fatah does, what Hezbollah does, what the Islamic State does, because this is part and parcel of the Muslim approach to war for the last 1,400 years. Christians, if you're going to say we cannot side with Israel because this is not the real Israel, because the Rothschilds created it, and they're not the real Jews because the Ashkenazi Jews are all Khazarian Turks, just from a geopolitical, historical standpoint, look at the 14 centuries of Muslim war against the West. You know why the West is called the West? It's because that's all that was left of Christendom after the armies of Islam got done with it in the 7th century A.D. It overran all of what is now Turkey, all of North Africa, all of the Middle East, Persia, half of Afghanistan, northern India, all of this by conquest. It was not peaceful assimilation. I've actually had Christian friends say, well, it's because the Vatican has just so oppressed the people in the 7th century that they welcomed Islam with open arms. Are you kidding me? I don't mean to be getting a little passionate here, but having done a little reading on the history of Islam's relations with the Western world in the last 1,400 years, I'm sorry, this is just historically, demonstrably untrue. From the writings of Muslim historians who were writing at the time these battles were taking place. Islam nearly overran Europe in 1682. Mark,
Absolutely.
I've got ancestors who had crossed the pond from your land and were here on this continent for nearly 40 years by the time that happened, for more than 40 years by that point. And had Vienna fallen in 1682, were it not for King Jan Sobieski of Poland, Europe would have fallen. The German states to the north were fractured and divided. Rome didn't have an army. The Vatican would have fallen. Maybe the French could have held them off. I don't know. Maybe the Brits in the 17th century had enough military to hold them back. I guess. But there were Muslim pirates on an island, a small island off the coast of Cornwall in the 1680s. And the fact that this is not taught to us in the West, I think, is why many of us looking at Israel, and I confess, when we first started researching and writing 25 years ago, Sharon and me, I thought, these guys like Avi Lipkin, they're really radical. I don't know if I can, talk to these guys, because they just really seem full of hatred. And having come to know Avi and his son Aaron, the family, but more than that, having actually read some history in the meanwhile, I understand, okay, all right, the problem in Israel is not what happened in 1948 or 1967 or 1973 or since Benjamin Netanyahu came to power. None of that. It all goes back to the 7th century and Muhammad. I'm sorry, but there it is. This is what's going on. So even as a Christian, right. Even if you want to say, look, the Rothschilds, don't care. God used Nebuchadnezzar to chastise Israel. God used a polytheist pagan king named Cyrus to send the Jews back to Jerusalem. You telling me that God was like, gee, I didn't see that coming. Oh, these Rothschilds. Oh, if only I could control the banking system. I don't get it. I just don't get it.
Sorry, the studio is just falling apart. That's quite funny.
I ranted a little.
No. Maybe I think it was all that energy coming over here, and then that happened.
It must have been.
It's interesting, because if God can use an ass, then he can use a Rothschild to speak and do some incredible things. And then, of course, what happens is that, it gets into the Federal Reserve Bank. It goes back to, it's the Battle of the Waterloo. There is a Rothschild standing by the pillar in the stock exchange, and then he's got a horse to come back to tell him that the British had lost. Actually, we had won, and then the stocks come down, and then he buys all them, and then he becomes extremely wealthy and all that. Okay. Certain people may dispute some of that, certain people don't, but certain things happened. By the time you get to Edmund Rothschild, a letter, was he involved in banking? Was he involved in the arts? Yes. Did the whole thing of him buying 122,000 acres? That's what the chatter is. Providing money to build the Knesset. Yes, but going back to all of that, but going back to what you were saying about history, what about this one then, Derek? And other people greater than me have talked about this. What about the Barbary Wars? What about the formation of the American Marines?
Our very first war as a country was against the Muslim pirates of North Africa. Right, exactly.
Precisely. And they had leathernecks. Why did they have leathernecks on their jackets? So that the scimitars, they could try and stop them lopping their heads off. Right. So the then president, whose name it always goes from me, what president was then president of the United States at that time? He said, why are you attacking us? We are a new country. Well, it says in our book that you are the infidels. Now, I don't, all right, a slight different
that was John
segue.
Adams, by the way.
John, thank you. A slight different segue at this point. We over in this country at the moment within the UK, suddenly we're maybe having some of the conversations that since 1997 we were told not to have the conversations about, e.g., or even before that, after the appalling events that happened with Salman Rushdie, and then creating and then producing the book, The Satanic Verses. When we stick to history of Islamism, let's just say it, then we have this discussion. But the fact that people, I won't reveal where I am or go into this, but the fact that people within the United Kingdom want to bring in hate speech laws, or they have, and they want you, because they don't like history. You have raised history. There is a few thousand years of history before the 7th century in that sense of what we're understanding, what is going on. And to totally back up what you're saying, we go to Scripture and we look at the 7 letters to the churches. What country are they in? And what is a dominant religion of where they are now? So we talk about Constantinople and all that. We talk about the denial of history, or let's do an archaeological project and brick over the fact that there's Christian history here, there's a church here, there's Jewish history here, etc. Say on the Dome of the Rock, and overnight one day we'll send an archaeological group in to dig up a load of stuff and try and smash up history and deny that it ever happened. That is what's gone on. But we politically, it's fascinating. I want to make this particular point because Ephesians 6 talks about the fact that we're not fighting flesh and blood, but principalities and powers. I'll throw this out to you. I am very aware in Dearborn, Michigan, of groups of people that are living there. I'm also aware that within that part of the world, someone's raised up that there are people of Arabic background who would also be big supporters of Israel. But that is not spoken about. But from those that follow an Islamic faith that is anti-Jewish, within that area, I understand, wasn't there a Ford factory once, and Henry Ford doing that? And Henry Ford, sadly, was extremely anti-Semitic.
Yes.
The reason why I'm saying this is because suddenly a country over here that has pushed through hate speech laws was at the centre of the Enlightenment, would call itself the country of the book, the history of Scotland within the Bible, etc. Now, when we get to John Knox and Calvinism, that's another issue, because suddenly it's dispensationalism. Then when we get to Martin Luther nailing his various points to the door, 3 years before his death, he should have then stopped, because sadly then he becomes rather anti-Semitic.
Yes.
We then have to remember other aspects of European history. The Spanish Inquisition. Up until that point, Spain was doing rather well. Then it has an Inquisition, convert or die. 3 boats leave on the eve of that, and one of them might have been Christopher Columbus, who actually, I think, Jewish background, even though people would say maybe a Moravian, where there's some kind of conversion to Christianity, but maybe not. I'm not an expert on that yet. Maybe maybe a few missiles will come my direction for saying that. But it's an incredible piece of history, because it means that his crew were Jewish and they were dropped off at various points on various travels. I'll throw that out, because that then starts to get the Truther movement would have to think about differently about that. I want to say this. I would just quickly want to say this. I am not here to pick fights. It's a bit like I feel as though I'm a captain of an oil tanker where the automatic computer steering system is. I'm on one side of the cabin. A group of people that believe in replacement theology, which I do not, are on the other side of the cabin, and I'm trying to steer them in the right direction, but without falling out with them. And it means, and having recently had an email, and I will mention this individual's name, having an email via the Chuck Baldwin School of Mistheology. I would deliberately say that because it breaks my heart. I am so saddened, because also it means that myself and people that I call dear friends, I'm at odds with, because I'm saying I don't agree with you. And that has a huge ramification now, because the European politically Bataillon wrote a book about dimitude, explaining this is basically the Islamic takeover of Europe. You are referred to history. This is real, and we must be able to talk about this. No, we can't talk about this, because if you talk about this, then you are then accused of being Islamophobic. Well, a phobia is a rightful concern or about something, or the fact that I am scared of something for a legitimate reason, right? And the legitimate reason is borne out through history. Now, this is a huge subject for another day, but you touched on this. You said this. You talked about the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, the fact that, as we speak, 2 days ago, we're talking on a Monday, and on the Saturday that just passed, over 300 drone rockets, ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, whatever, were then sent towards Israel. Miraculously, 99% of those were intercepted, and they were intercepted by the tech that Israel has to defend itself, but it was intercepted by American technology, planes, by planes from the UK, by technology from Saudi Arabia, by Jordan. Jordan and Saudi cleared their airspace so that this could then be undertaken. This is unprecedented, that two Arab countries, and remember in the past, and you referred to this within Jordan, because in the past they had called a major hug from Pakistan to Jordan to put down a Palestinian people group uprising within the Hashemite kingdom, within their kingdom, and 20,000, I think, of them were killed. 20,000 Palestinians were put down and killed. Now, this is unprecedented. What is also unprecedented is that on the streets of your country, on the streets of my country, on the streets of other European cities, on the streets of Australia, within days in Australia, you had this member of the follower of Islam shouting, "This is a great day, this is fantastic," celebrating the pogrom of the 7th of October, and then it started from the river to the sea. The fact that they cannot name the river and they cannot name the sea, but the river to the sea means that we will exterminate a people group and we will exterminate a country. And that isn't within polite dinner party society on your side of the pond or over here, people going, well, no, they just want a recognition politically and all of this.
No, the original Arab actually reads, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be Arab. They changed it when it was translated into English because it doesn't play as well at dinner parties when you're making it clear that you want to exterminate 9 million Jews all in one shot. I know we've only scratched the surface, Mark, but trying to keep, well, for two reasons. Number one, I try to keep these programs to a manageable length for people to fit into their schedules. But secondly, this being Monday, April 15th, if I don't get to the post office with a couple pieces of post that must be postmarked today, we will have serious trouble from the Internal Revenue Service. So I need to break here and get that off to the post office. I do want to point out that you're currently Chancellor, but former Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt, just 4 years ago, issued a report showing that in the Middle East, the percentage of Christians, because this is one of the criticisms that's raised, this is one of the points that was raised by Tucker Carlson and his guest, who is an Arab pastor in Bethlehem, who claimed that what happened on October 7th was understandable because of the persecution of the Palestinian people since 1948, and that Tucker Carlson basically accusing Christians who don't oppose what Israel is doing, of having lost the plot, because Christians are being persecuted under the Zionist regime, according to the Reverend Dr. Munther Isaac. Jeremy Hunt pointed out that from the over the last century in the Middle East as a whole, the percentage of Christians has declined from 20% to 5%, but the percentage in the Palestinian Arab territories is now down to 1.5%. And according to the Christian charity Open Doors, it's not because of Jewish persecution, it's because of Islamic oppression. Arabs in that region who convert to Christianity, their lives are at risk and they leave. So this is something to remember. If that's your justification, Christian, for opposing what you consider a Zionist regime, it's not the Jews who are driving Christians out. The only place where Christians are really safe in the Middle East is in Israel. So, Mark, I know, again, we've only touched on the historic background here. I see Scripture yet to be fulfilled. Zechariah 12, I'll bring that up again. Verse 10 especially, which prophesies a day when the house of David will look on, and the Scripture says, look on me, on him whom they have pierced, a clear prophecy of the Messiah and his return, and mourn for him as one mourns for an only child. That, there are others, but that to me says that there is still a role for Israel in the end times. We, the Christian church, if you want to say, hey, you know, we're the new Israel, then why are we looking on him whom we have pierced and mourned?
Absolutely. And I'd say go and read Romans 11. Go and read Romans 11, 23 to 25, right?
Absolutely.
We have been grafted in. It's a total mystery, but I am so grateful for that. And we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be here. And people need to understand that, you know, because you can't deny Scripture, Derek, but that's part of the problem, isn't it? People deny Scripture because it doesn't fit the nice little shape.
Absolutely. Mark Sutherland, online, marksutherland.org, and the host of the Sutherland Report on YouTube. Mark, it's good to see you. It's been too long. We'll do this again soon.
Derek, it's been a pleasure, and thank you for letting me have this platform. It's been a delight to see you, and I look forward to coming back. Thank you.
Check the notes below for links to where you can follow Mark Sutherland online. His insightful analysis and commentary is always worth your time. Straight ahead, details on where we will be in the weeks and months ahead. Yes, we are going to Israel this year. In fact, in just over a week. And you still have time to join us if you are so led. And Roman Catholic priest, AI priest, is defrocked, in a sense. Details straight ahead as A View from the Bunker continues.
Summer reading season is just around the corner. We want to help you get ready.
You can buy fiction, you can buy nonfiction through the Gilbert House store, whichever you want. All of our books are 40% off. 40%.
That includes all 8 novels of the Red Wing saga.
Book 9 is coming, probably early summer.
My 2 novels, and then, of course, all of our nonfiction stuff, including our most recent books, Giants, Gods, and Dragons, The Second Coming of Saturn, and Veneration, a deep dive into the cult of the Nephilim.
April and May, you get 62 days.
Absolutely.
No, 61. April only has 30.
Regardless, through the end of May, 40% off on all of our books at the Gilbert House store, available only online. Go to gilberthouse.org/store. You'll find all the prices slashed on our books, 40% off, gilberthouse.org/store. And thank you for your prayers and support.
Talking the Walk every Sunday night from the beautiful Missouri Ozarks. It's A View from the Bunker. I'm Derek Gilbert. You'll find us online at VFTB.net. You'll also find our web hub for everything that Sharon and I do at gilberthouse.org, gilberthouse.org. My website, derekpgilbert.com. On social media, X, formerly Twitter, at ViewFromBunker, at Derek Gilbert, and now at GilbertHouse_TV. GilbertHouse_TV. And we will soon be uploading videos like this and our weekly Unraveling Revelation program to X at GilbertHouse_TV. Bookmark that. We'll keep you posted on that progress. We're on Facebook as well. View from the Bunker, Threads, or rather, well, Threads. Yeah. Yeah. Truth Social, Gab Me We Get Her at Derek P. Gilbert, and on YouTube at Gilbert House. Please subscribe, share, click the bell for notifications, and then cancel-proof yourself by downloading our free mobile app, which brings all of our video content right into your smartphone or tablet, along with an audio Bible with multiple translations, a calendar of our upcoming events and upcoming Bible readings for our weekly Bible study, the Gilbert House Fellowship, and also a messaging area where you can share ideas, thoughts, questions of Sharon and me, and also ask for prayer and offer prayer in support of others, and all of this offline. So it's not being trolled by the internet at large. You'll find all of this at gilberthouse.org/app, gilberthouse.org/app. There's also a link at vftb.net. Look for the link in the top menu bar. Interesting story, thanks to notthebee.com. Not the Bee is a website that was started by the founder of the Babylon Bee, which is a parody news site. But they noticed very early in the history of the Babylon Bee, which is brilliant. If you don't subscribe to it, you should. I mean, you can read it for free, but if you want the ad-free experience and promote the work that they're doing, which is brilliant, poking fun at left, right, and center, yeah, send them a few bucks. Subscribe. We do. But Not the Bee is an outgrowth of the Babylon Bee, as they noticed there are some news items that are just so bizarre you think they're parody, but they're not. And oftentimes those stories are some of the most important in terms of the cultural and religious spiritual changes that are taking place in the world around us. This one caught my attention because Sharon and I have been tracking the transhumanist movement and the growth of artificial intelligence. Our colleagues at Skywatch TV, in fact, Joe Artis Horn, Ellie Anderson, collaborated with their father, Tom Horn, who, of course, was called home by the Lord last October, on a book just released called Summoning the Demon. The title taken from the famous quote now by Elon Musk, who said that creating artificial intelligence, especially autonomous AI, is literally summoning the demon. Well, a Roman Catholic apologetics organization called Catholic Answers introduced an interactive AI and decided to put an animated avatar in front of this AI. Now, it's just using a large language model to return answers to questions about Roman Catholic doctrine and matters of the faith. They decided to create this artificial answer man in the form of a priest they named Father Justin, your AI Catholic Answers advisor. Now, no malicious intent here, no evil intent. And I say, as a Protestant, I understand there are issues with Roman Catholic doctrine. I was Roman Catholic, in fact, for a period of about 8 years during a previous marriage. Raised Protestant, converted back. And so I'm a little more sympathetic to Roman Catholicism, not the doctrine, but the people in the faith than maybe some other Protestants. All right, full disclosure. But yes, I recognize that there are issues that are official Roman Catholic doctrine that are not biblical. Now, I don't think there was any malicious intent on the part of Catholic Answers. They were just trying to provide an interactive way to respond to legitimate questions from people in the Roman Catholic Church about their faith. However, presenting this AI answer man as a priest attracted some pushback from Roman Catholics. And they shared their concerns with Catholic Answers, who then have rebranded, shall we say, the AI answer man. It is no longer Father Justin. It is just now Justin. He's no longer wearing a collar, just depicted with a dark suit and an open collar shirt. Still giving answers based on the large language model algorithms, drawing from Roman Catholic catechism and giving those answers, but no longer with a collar. One commentator, a Roman Catholic, posted this to X, quote, "I will never forgive the no fun crowd for laicizing Father Justin," defrocking him, in other words. "Now he smokes pipe tobacco and reads G.K. Chesterton," end quote. Funny. Again, no ill intent on the part of Catholic Answers, and we just think it is somewhat amusing, although we have talked on various programs about the disturbing trend to introduce AI into our faith. In fact, on Twitch, there is a rather heretical AI Jesus 24/7, people interacting with this AI Jesus, and he is this artificial intelligence Jesus is giving people heretical advice on just about everything. So, circling back to the book, Summoning the Demon, Joe Horn, Allie Anderson, and Tom Horn presenting a rather disturbing look at how artificial intelligence may play a key role in the unfolding of end times Bible prophecy. So again, I say this not to mock the folks at Catholic Answers. They meant well. Probably not the greatest execution. Bless their pointy little heads. We've got a couple of things to tell you about. First of all, we are going to Israel, and we will be there on May 6th. We are leaving here in the United States on the 5th, probably arriving on the afternoon of leaving on the 5th, arriving the afternoon of the 6th in Tel Aviv, and we will be greeting everybody as they arrive on the 7th. We'll be there for a week. It'll be a small group. There may be just 10 of us that are traveling through Israel, going to Hostage Square in Tel Aviv, seeing the memorial, the display. That's not really the right word. The exhibition based on the Nova Music Festival. That was the music festival that was attacked by the paragliders, the terrorists floating in, gliding in on hang gliders. Horrific. We'll also visit with some of the families that have been evacuated from their homes in the north. Some 60,000 Israelis still within range of Hezbollah rockets in the north and evacuated. Areas that are being excavated in the north, archaeological digs, sadly, that we would normally visit on a tour of Israel are now off limits because they're within range. So that is among the places that we will see. We'll, of course, go to Jerusalem and the sites in Jerusalem that are important in this supernatural war, including the Temple Mount, also the Mount of Olives, the Western Wall, the tunnels under the Western Wall, and more. And then we'll go into the south, go to the Negev and visit Sderot, the village there where the police station was surrounded, besieged by Hamas terrorists on October 7th. And we will report back via video on a daily basis while we're there, just to show you without the filter of Western media what we find on the ground. And it's been our experience after 3 trips to Israel that what you see when you're there is quite different from what the media says it sees when it's on the ground there. So there is still time if you're interested, but you really need to make a decision quickly. Gilberthouse.org/travel, gilberthouse.org/travel if you want to join us. Again, the tour kicks off in earnest on the 8th of May. People arriving on the 7th. We're going a day early because flights, apparently right now, you can't fly direct from New York to Tel Aviv. Or if you can, it's really, really expensive. I'm not sure. But we're having to bounce around and make 3 stops on the way to Tel Aviv this time. This is the first time we've had to do that. Normally, it's just straight to Chicago and then from Chicago straight across, or New York and then straight across. Not this time. But that's okay. We're happy to be going back in 2024, which we hadn't expected when things broke out last October. And our friends at Lipkin Tours will, I know, take very, very good care of us. Conferences coming up. Of course, you can still register and take advantage of the streaming video conferences. Skywatch TV's virtual conference, Confronting the Darkness, DefenderConference.com, the Prophetic Signs and the Heavenlies Conference, Hear the Watchman. That was just a few weeks ago in Dallas. You can still get the streaming video from that conference at hearthewatchmen.com. Next on our tour schedule or travel schedule for conferences, early June, the Mysteries of the Bible Verse Conference in Cincinnati, the Marriott Cincinnati Airport in Hebron, Ohio. June 7th and 8th, we'll be there along with Pastor Mike Hoggard, Rudy Landa, Josh Davis, Mac Dominic, Greg Patton, and Micah Van Huss, a recent guest on this program. You can find out more. This one, by the way, will not be streamed, so if you're in the area, if you're interested in the subjects, I'll be talking about giants and about why Lucifer is not Satan. He may be even worse. Different entity, but even more dangerous, perhaps. Those are among the topics. UFOs, giants. I know there are many other subjects that will be discussed that are not taught in Sunday school, but if you're interested, you'll need to be there because this will not be streamed or recorded as far as I know. More information at swrc.com. That's for Southwest Radio Church, swrc.com. June 21st through 23rd, we'll be at His Call Ministries in Sparta, Missouri. That's between Springfield and Branson. June 21st through 23rd, Friday night, Saturday, Sunday morning. It's just Sharon and me. The theme of the weekend, the gates of hell. And if you want to join us, contact His Call Ministries to reserve your spot, hiscallministries.com, hiscallministries.com. In July 26th and 27th, the Go Therefore Conference at Harvest Revival Center in Brookville, Ohio. That's just outside Dayton. We'll be there with L.A. Marzulli, Pastor Paul Begley, Dr. Greg Reed, Dr. Judd Burton, Pastor Carl Gallups, Dr. Mike Spalding. Quite a lineup. This will be streamed on the web. If you can't make it to Dayton, then you, by all means, sign up for the streaming video. Sharon and I just agreed to stay on Sunday morning, and we'll be speaking at Harvest Revival Center on the Sunday morning services there on July 28th. So if you can join us there, we certainly encourage you to do so. You can find all of our upcoming events both at our website, gilberthouse.org, or on our free app, which again, you can find at gilberthouse.org/app. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule to watch or listen, wherever that may be. If you're listening to Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, Amazon Music, Audible, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Spreaker, Pandora, wherever else you find us, which is, of course, wherever fine podcasts are sold. We appreciate you taking time to give us a review, give us a like, and share with your friends. Our announcer, the inimitable D.C. Good, and A View from the Bunker is a production of Gilbert House Ministries, released under Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. We wrestle not against flesh and blood. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Good night, Oliver, wherever you are. I'm Derek Gilbert. This is A View from the Bunker.